Exactly. So I decided to start playing around with the cold exposure stuff and started out with just some standard cold water dousing. And fortunately, we had the coldest winter on record in a long time here. So I had a very long winter that was also quite cold for me to get to play with. I mean, it doesn't get very, very cold here compared to what it does in, Minnesota or somewhere, but it does get a lot colder than in California and Florida.
Sure.
So we were getting down into single digit Fahrenheit stuff, and I'm outside dumping two 5 gallon buckets full of water that have been sitting out there for 4 hours over my head. And my wife walks out on the back porch, goes, "Nope," and just walks right back in the house. So I'm doing that kind of stuff, and then got to investigating some possibilities there. And there's this guy named Wim Hof who's
Oh,
based
I've
out of
looked into
Holland.
Wim Hof. Yeah, tell us about Wim Hof. It's amazing what that guy can pull off.
Wim Hof is just awesome. He's up there in my list of important people. He's up there next to Pavel and Dennis Rogers and the Mighty Atom and Slim the Hammerman. I mean, he's he gets it. And very serendipitous. I was playing with Cole television on Christmas Day, and a program came on, Freaks of Nature, and it was an episode about Wim Hof. And I had heard of him, the Iceman, but this episode detailed some of the stuff that he's doing and how he was able to use breathing and specific training ideas to control his internal body temperature and also to affect his autonomic nervous system. And I'm like, okay, I want to know about this. So I ordered his book, read it, and checked out some stuff that's available for him online, and kept pursuing that a little bit. And I'm going to bring this all back around in just a minute, I
Sure,
promise.
sure. I
Um,
believe you.
and so by the time late February rolled around, I'm feeling confident enough about what I've been doing that I go out and I marked it in my training log. The air temperature was 23 degrees Fahrenheit. And I went to a place here in town near Nashville called Old Hickory Lake, the Percy Priest Dam. And I got one of those little aquarium thermometers and put it in the water right by the edge of the shore. Um, and strapped my swim trunks on, did my breathing exercises, walked out into the water, got down neck deep, and stayed out there for about 3 minutes. Came back out of the water and checked the temperature of the water. The water temperature was 34 degrees.
Oh, snap. You were just a couple degrees from freezing, huh?
It's like my PR for, yeah, yeah. So that's like my PR for cold exposure, right? So just taking a 10-minute cold shower is nothing at this point. So I felt really exhilarated and good after that. I mean, it wasn't it was a tough experience, but I'm glad I did it and all that. So all that to say, that brings me back around to what one thing that the cold has taught me just in these past few months is to have that factual analysis outlook on stuff. Okay, if I'm looking at that cold water and I know that I'm going to go into it anyway, and I start thinking, man, this is going to suck. This is going to be terrible. This is going to be hard. I'm going to hate this. Why am I doing this to myself? This is just going to be awful. Well, guess what my experience is going to be like? It's going to suck, right?
Right.
If I walk up to a heavy weight and I'm like, man, I don't know if I can do this. This is going to suck. It's going to be terrible. Or, if I'm going to do like some long drawn out kettlebell swing or endurance type training session, and the whole time I'm like, man, this is going to be awful. God, I'm going to kick my own ass doing this, and all. My experience is not going to be pleasant.
Yeah.
Um, and if conversely, if I say, oh, this is going to be awesome, jumping in this in this 34 degree water when it's 23 degrees outside, or getting underneath this heavy barbell that's going to try to crush me to the ground. Oh, it's going to be awesome and fun. Well, I know that that's not the truth. I know I'm lying to myself subconsciously when I say that. So if I just remove myself from it and be the observer and say, okay, this water is going to be cold, period. This weight is going to be heavy, period. This piece of steel that I'm going to bend is probably going to cause me a little bit of pain, and I'm going to have to exert myself a great deal, period. Without putting any like emotional attachment or judgment
Sure.
into it, then it becomes just a purely factual exercise. And then after it's over with, you can reflect on whether it sucked or not, or whether you enjoyed it or not.
Right. But you're not putting that onto the equation before you perform the exercise.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So you can use the emotional component to fire yourself up, sure, but you can also use it to enjoy the experience after it's over with. But if you're so concerned that it's going to suck and be terrible going into it, you don't have a hope
Right.
in 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 making it through and ever having any, or having the maximum amount of benefit come from it.
Yeah. That's so many
So I really,
There's so many interesting thoughts about mindset there that you're talking about. I really like how you use cold water as an example because
mhm,
most people just don't have the guts to just try cold water therapy once, not realizing that it's actually a very pleasurable experience when you're done with it. You know,
right,
you get out of a cold shower, you feel amazing. You get out of an
mhm,
ice bath, you feel more amazing. It's almost like the colder it gets, the more you feel like you've conquered a foe and that you've
uh-huh,
come out on top. And to me, I've preached it for so long as a mental toughness exercise. And to be honest, when you look back through all the old time strongmen, all the health experts for the last hundreds of years, even people going back thousands of years, they all preach cold water therapy.
right,
And so it's just one of those things that people can use. And I really like the mental observations you made with that
yeah.
people can then also apply to their workouts as well.
Well, and the same thing happens nutritionally. People think I'm going to go on a diet. This is going to
This
suck,
is
but
gonna suck.
yeah, this food's going to be terrible. And then that starts getting into the whole skewed mentality of like, I was really good all week, but then on the weekend I had cheese fries and drank beer, so I was really bad. And I'm like, it's food. There's no
Yeah,
moral component
you
to
just
it.
ate food.
You ate food, and that food is either going to improve your health and take you in the direction of whatever, of the 20 pounds you said you wanted to lose, or it's not. But either way, you're not morally deficient because you ate a damn Pop Tart.
Right. Yeah.
It just did you enjoy it? Yes. Then stop feeling guilty about it.
It's almost like people marry their identity to what they're doing based on somebody else's like values that are created within our society. Like I'm a bad
Absolutely.
person because I ate a Twinkie.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I that's kind of where my mind has been lately, and it's been pretty interesting just how my experience of everything that I'm doing that might involve some degree of what I might have thought of as of suck or exertion or misery has changed a little bit just because my outlook on it's changed.
Yeah. Well, so for you guys out there listening, you go out there and shiver your balls off in a 34-degree lake, and you'll come out like a Zen monk, right?
Do it. I don't know about a Zen monk, but yeah, do it. It'll teach you stuff. There are some things that can only be learned in certain situations.
Sure.
It's like your people who've seen every single mixed martial art pay-per-view in existence, or every single NFL football game that fancy themselves as knowing the sport, but they've never strapped on a pair of gloves or a helmet in their life.
Right.
You get hit one time square in the face, and none of the stuff that you think you knew matters anymore.
Not a bit.
Not a bit. Conversely to that, if you're one of the people, and I can kind of understand this and relate to this, having this idea, it's like, nope, I'm not going to do that. No way I would ever jump in that lake.
Right.
Well, okay, then don't. That's fine. But if you decide ahead of time that that's not who you are, then that's who you're going to be. But if you decide ahead of time that you're the kind of person that's like, well, let's try it and see what happens. Because the benefits, physiologically, the benefits are there.
Sure.
I've experienced them empirically. Wim's done some stuff recently where he's been strapped into monitors and like scientific
Sure.
equipment and
Sure.
stuff. And I think his website is innerfire.nl. It's NL's Netherlands, I think.
I'll
But
have to get him on the podcast, man. That would be a good podcast.
Wim is the man. Love that guy. Love that guy. But
Yeah.
to me, it's all the same. Jumping in the cold water, bending a piece of steel, it's all the same thing.
Gotcha. Well, you mentioned something earlier, David, that I want to touch on that I really think is valuable to talk about. We've been talking about mental strength. We talked a little bit about just developing strength. You mentioned not wanting to get hurt. And I think that is
Hmm?
so powerful because, like, so many people these days are just jumping into things like Oli lifting, Olympic lifting, or power lifting, or things that they're just not preparing their bodies for. And I want to know kind of what approach you would take to a complete beginner, maybe through advanced. Like, where would you start somebody if they were just like a total beginner and you just want to just build some basic strength? Like, where could people start? Like a couple exercises and whatnot.
The very first thing I'm going to do if you come in my door and tell me you want to get stronger is I'm clearly, obviously, I'm going to get an injury history on you to see if you've messed up something somehow,
Sure.
whether it was, exercise related, or you got hit by a car or fell off a horse or whatever. I need to know that going in. But if you're clear and good on all that sort of stuff, I'm probably going to start with just fundamental movement patterns. Hinging at the hips, being able to do some variation of a squat and a push and a pull. Have you be able to roll over from your back onto your belly on the floor and from your belly onto your back, which is amazing to me how many people
Can't do it.
can't do that. Particularly if I limit the conditions okay, you can
Sure,
roll
you
over
can't use your
from belly
legs
to
or
back,
something.
but you can't use your legs.
Sure.
What's going to happen to you if you wind up in that? How do you get out of bed?
Right.
So I generally start from there, and I'm a big fan of rolling stuff. I'm a big fan of crawling, those sorts of things. And then the fundamental strength stuff that I do is I always wind up with the progressions that we use in Strong First for teaching the kettlebell swing, which is a hip hinging or a deadlifting movement.
Right.
So I'm going to go with that, and I'm going to go with some variation on the get up, which has you lying down, coming to standing, and going back down, which really we're talking about basic human development in that way. I mean, there's dozens of different ways you can do the get up.
Sure.
Really, at the end of the day, all we're talking about is you're lying down on the floor. Can you stand up from there?
Right.
And depending on what mileage and what baggage you're bringing in, we will come up with whatever variation makes the most sense for you to reach the goal that you tell me you want to reach.
Yeah.
If I get people to come in that are very, very overweight, just getting them to roll over and sit up on their elbow and go back down may be high intensity exercise for them.
Sure.
And that's fine, because they're every time they do that, they're taking one small step in the direction they want to go. And we were talking earlier about not wanting to get hurt. If you just focus on the next small step and think of it instead of in terms of, 6 weeks or 8 weeks or 12 weeks or 90 days or whatever, think of it, I'm 44. What am I going to be doing when I'm 65?
Right. Right.
What am I going to be doing when I'm 75 or 80,
You want to start thinking about longevity, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So for strength and movement, we start with can you move well? Because if you can't move well, then we probably shouldn't load that.
Yeah.
I'm a fan of the functional movement screen. I don't use it as much as I could, but I'm a fan of their philosophy and the way that the things are done there. That you assess, you correct, and then you reassess.
Sure.
The other thing, we touched on it briefly when I went on my little rant about the cold exposure earlier. The other thing is I am astounded by not the amount of, but just the acceptance of complete and utter lack of thought about breathing.
Sure.
It is literally the single most important thing that every human being is going to do at any given moment of the day. And if you don't believe that, don't do it for about 30 minutes.
Yeah, stop. Try stopping.
Yeah,